What's up YouTube? We're back again, and this is a video about my tank, and we're going to talk specifically today about my dosing equipment. So in this tank, I just gave a quick update, and I know that video was a little short, so I'm going to go in depth a little more about some of the things that I wanted to talk on in a second video. This tank, I added a bunch of frags, and I recently added all that dosing equipment as you saw before, all the Neptune products, and I've been really trying to gather basically a good dosing schedule and try to narrow down exactly how much calcium and alkalinity I need to be adding to make this tank grow really fast. I'll show you here. I have some really good growth going on. My first coral that I have growth going on is this Montipora right here. It's starting to grow down and encrust onto the rocks, which is super exciting. As I've had it for a while. I got it from $15 from Petco, and it didn't seem like it was growing real well, and it's finally starting to take off, so that's super exciting. The next coral I have over here that's starting to get some good growth is this green Bali Slimer, and then the purple Stylo and the Digi Forest Fire. Those guys are starting to take off, and I think all of this stuff is really because of the dosing. The Neptune Trident has been regularly testing my water, and the dose unit, the pumps, and the reservoirs have been really keeping it all together. I will say it's not perfect. My first experience with it, I like it so far. I think it's worth the money. I know there's a lot of reviews out there that people have said they had issues. I only had one issue so far, and unfortunately it happened to me while I was out of town. I will say, when you're setting up your dose and your trident and all that stuff, there's a couple things I'll talk about basically that you should keep in mind. When you set up your trident, you're technically supposed to have the trident above the water level. This tank is an AIO, and that is not possible. And you can buy mounts on Etsy, which I have, to mount it on the wall or on the stand, but I bought the mounts just as a last resort. But I called Bulk Reef Supply, and they said, I had one person tell me it can go underneath the stand, it'll be no problem. I had another person tell me that it can go above the water level. It has to go above the water level or it's not going to work properly, and it will back siphon into the tank or wherever, into the stand, wherever it's placed. Well, first problem is, no, you can put the trident wherever you want. I have the trident down here beneath my stand, and yes, there is a water tube that does take a sample, the sample line, that does go from up here all the way down to the trident, and there is a small possibility that little tube will pop off and it will back siphon. When you buy an Apex, they give you a water sensor. If you get the kit, you'll get a little sensor that will say if there's water flow or if it senses water, like a leak detection sensor. So I just put that sensor right over the sample line just in case that there is a leak. It will set off the sensor. So it does still work. The trident does still work beneath the tank, and you don't have to have it above the water line. So that's the first real challenge I had to setting all this up. The second challenge is the dose comes with this real thin tubing, and a lot of people switch it out. I was going out of town, and I was like, I just want to set this up so I can have my tank really working on the parameters and just keep an eye on it while I'm out of town and get some dosing going so I can make sure everything's stable. And I set it up with the factory tubing, and I noticed when I was out of town, my readings kept going down, but for calcium alkalinity, but I was still dosing, and I kept upping the level of amount of basically material being dosed. And I couldn't figure out what was going on, so when I got home, I noticed the factory tubing doesn't really make that great of a seal on the nipples of the dose. So what I did was I ended up switching it out for clear RODI tubing from Bulk Reef Supply, which is a super cheap and easy fix. I did not use the John Guest fittings, whatever you call them. I have them. You can buy a pack of 4 from Bulk Reef Supply or Saltwater Aquarium. I bought them just in case. Instead, I also got the 20 feet of clear RODI tubing, and I just took a lighter. You heat up the end of the RDI tubing, and then you can shove it directly over the little like nipple that basically where the lines fit, I guess, the little fitting, which I'll show you here, and you can see right now that's what it looks like. And after that, I reprimed the lines, and it's all been working super nicely. So I would say that if you're going to set up a dose, probably don't use the factory line that they give you or tubing that they give you. Maybe alt for a RODI line setup, and I chose clear because it's easiest to see if there's bubbles in the lines and you can see if fluid's really going through or not. The next thing that I had trouble setting up was in this AIO tank, I don't have a ton of room in the stand because I have a 15-gallon Innovative Marine top-off container down there, so I don't have a ton of room. So I had to improvise, which I'll show you here. This is basically inside here is how I have it set up. And this dose is basically, I drilled holes in the cabinet, like, I guess, middle section of the cabinet to set things on. I drilled holes to run the lines through there, and then they go down into the containers. So that's been working pretty well. And then I basically have my apex sitting, like the brain of everything, sitting there. And then I have the power bar on the back and the trident right next to the dose. And so far, all of that stuff has been super effective. It's all working really well. Besides the lines, those are the only real problems I've had. The next thing that I want to talk about is coral growth. I will say that this stuff is pretty expensive, but it is truly, I think, made these corals grow faster because it's more consistent with calcium and alkalinity levels. I feel like it's a lot easier to sit back and enjoy my tank and just know if I need to adjust things. It's just like a little press of a button and I can see it from anywhere in the world. So that's like really reassuring. I can travel, I can go out of town, and I can see how things are going, and I can keep an eye on the levels. And if I am in town, I can just set up a dosing schedule and forget it and just keep an eye on it and just look at it if I need to. And that's really helped these corals take off. If you look at my first video when I got my purple stylo and my green slimer and a couple of these other corals like the Forest Fire, they were way smaller. And I've had this going for a couple weeks now, and it's, you know, these corals have really started to grow, and it's visible. It's very visible. So I would say that if you want to increase your chances of faster coral growth, you know, it's worth the investment. It's made enjoying my reef way more enjoyable because I don't have to constantly be pouring stuff in the tank. It's really just made my life a lot easier, and it's just made this tank a lot better as far as stability goes. The other thing is with the probes, you can keep the pH in check. You can really see what's going on with that. So the only thing you're really probably going to have to be testing is your nitrates by hand, which is fine. I mean, I don't mind testing that. I really, to be honest, I don't test my nitrates unless I notice something's wrong or I see an issue or my corals aren't having a good time. But yeah, as you can see, the tank, it looks like it's doing pretty well. I've seen a ton of new growth on my Dunking colony, my GSP colony, even though it's not fully open right now. It's starting to grow and spread onto the back wall, so that's super cool. I even glued a little, like, it dropped a little piece of GSP, so I glued it to this rock, and that's starting to grow, which is really cool. I'm also seeing spots of coralline in the back corner, which are starting to show up. So the tank is very healthy, and like I said, when it comes to these Trident products, there's a ton of bad reviews out there, but overall, from my perspective, it has been an uphill battle to figure out how it all works. But once you set it all up and you figure it out, and you'll notice that the setup menus are really easy to understand, and once you get it all configured to your tank, it really helps improve growth and coloration, and it really just pushes your tank along, and it's very good reassurance if you're out of town or you travel a lot. And I travel a lot for work, so it's one of those things where it's just nice to have. The next thing we're going to talk about in my following video is we're going to go in depth on what I'm doing with the tank as far as corals and what my future predictions are for this tank. So stay tuned for that. That video is going to be coming soon, and thanks for watching my YouTube video, and have a great day.